Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content. Spain, 1199. Astride a mighty warhorse, 77-year-old Eleanor of Aquitaine continues the long and arduous climb up the rocky slopes of the mighty Pyrenees Mountains. She is regal in demeanor and commanding in presence. Once Europe's most powerful woman, undertaking one final, grueling journey in a mission to once more alter the course of European politics. She is followed by an honor guard of knights and diplomats, eager to earn her favor for aiding her on her quest. Eleanor remembers many years ago, in 1147, when at the age of 25 she rode out to war. She was Queen of France then, marching towards the battlefields of the Second Crusade, clad in shining armor and leading a squadron of women whose warlike bravery evoked images of the mythical Amazons from all who viewed them. In the years between, she has traveled far and wide, across Europe, from Spain to Germany, through the Balkans, into Constantinople, and even into the Holy Land. She's negotiated treaties in the courts of foreign lords, ruled multiple kingdoms, survived wars, imprisonment, and kidnapping attempts, and served as a dominant force in European politics for 60 years. When her son, Richard the Lionheart, was on his own crusade, it was she who kept the kingdom in line. When he was imprisoned in Germany, it was also she who undertook the long and punishing journey to personally negotiate his release. Now, the grandmother of Europe rides forth once again, this time towards the Kingdom of Castile, to negotiate a peace between the Plantagenet dynasty and the Capetian dynasty. Two mighty nations, England and France, are on the brink of war. The future of both countries depends on her success. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we talk about the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined today by a special guest. She is the author of An Unquiet Peace and Under the Paper Moon, and has been working in TV and film for many years now. Please welcome Shaina Steinberg. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah. And so we are going to be talking about a pretty interesting story today. And we were connected through our producer, Andrew, who's been a co-host on the show many, many times now. And you've been working, I was looking at your resume, you've been working in TV and film for a while now.
Yeah, I realized it was maybe 22 years now, which doesn't seem possible because I'm not that old.
I feel the same thing.
Yeah.
Badass came out 20 years ago, the book, and I was just like, oh my God, can that be real? Like, my website is old enough to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like you were working on Cold Case, Malcolm in the Middle. You were working on Spartacus, which was awesome. I loved that show. And so so what kind of work do you do for TV movies?
So I came up through TV as an assistant, as most people do. And I worked on a bunch of procedurals. I worked on Spartacus. I worked on Bionic Woman, the reboot, which was a very interesting place to be. And then I kind of struck out on my own and I pitched pilots. I wrote a couple. And then COVID hit and I had a baby and I was not going back into a TV writer's room. So I pivoted and wrote novels and sold a feature script. And I'm feeling really lucky just to be able to do my work right now.
Well, that's great. And so you've written a novel and then a second one has just come out. So,
yes. And they're in the same series.
Okay, so it's the same series.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but An Unquiet Peace was released last month?
Yeah, it was last month, April 29th.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
Awesome to have a book get published and get in print. What is it about? I do know this, but I feel like we should set this up.
So the first book starts with two spies during the war, Evelyn Bishop and Nick Gallagher. And
during the Second World War.
In the Second World War, yes. I keep forgetting there were many. But they were both...
There's been multiple wars.
Multiple wars.
History.
Multiple wars even in the last century. So yes. But yeah, they were two spies working for the OSS, and they fell in love. And at the end of the war, he betrayed her and broke her heart. And she went back home to Los Angeles, where everybody was expecting her to be a socialite. And instead, she decided to work as a private eye. And when the man she is following is murdered, she finds Nick at the crime scene. And so the first book is them teaming up to solve this crime. And the second book is whole new crimes, one of which involves someone coming back from Nick's past. And for Evelyn, she gets dragged into the Berlin blockade.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting time period too. You don't see that very often, but yeah, I love, like, I've been reading a lot about that kind of thing recently.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at what happens after war and how it affected everyone.
Especially in Berlin, which was just such a unique situation where you had the Russians and the American and or the Allies, and then you've got this kind of West Berlin in the middle of East Germany, and everything's kind of tricky. Everything gets tricky.
Definitely, and
they were on the same team, and now they hate each other.
Well, and you add in the fact too that for the Americans, the people they are trying to feed were shooting at them 3 years before.
Yeah. Everything's complicated. We're friends now, and now we dislike these guys who used to be our friends, but we don't like them anymore.
Exactly.
Anyway, there's tanks, and there might be nuclear war soon.
Yeah, it's all good. It's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have this book that was just released, and Andrew connected us, and we were like, well, we should do something to connect to tie in your book. And so we started talking about OSS badasses, and the first story that you were talking about was Virginia Hall, who was one of the first characters we did on our series. I'm like, oh, we've done Virginia Hall, and we started talking about different characters from the OSS that we could talk about. And at some point, you threw out the name Eleanor of Aquitaine, who is not a World War II character.
Definitely not. She was many years before.
Yes, but I was like very excited when you said that, because I'd always had a soft spot for her story. Like, she's awesome.
She's amazing.
Yeah, one of the most powerful women of the Middle Ages, which is a very difficult thing to be. And and I'd always been wanting to write about her, and I never have. She comes up as a character in several other characters I've written about, because she's kind of in the background for 90 years, 100 years of medieval history, but I've never featured her. And so when you mentioned her, I was like, well, I don't know how set you are on wanting to talk about the OSS, but we might have you come back for that. And we might, because I'm very excited to talk about Eleanor. And then you wrote me back and we're like, yes, I can talk about Eleanor all day. We can totally do this.
Well, she's like the original she's not the original badass, but she is like the OG of European badass, like female badasses. I mean, she's incredible. And think about it, like, what is this? 800, 900 years later, and we're not referring to her as the Queen of France or the Queen of England. We're still talking about her as Eleanor of Aquitaine, like who she was originally. That's a really
good point. Yeah, the name, like, names have so much power. Yeah. And yeah, I love that, because we're going to see that she becomes the Queen of, she becomes the Queen of France and the Queen of England. But yeah, you're right. She never is referred to as like Queen Eleanor of England.
Yeah.
She's always referred to as Eleanor of Aquitaine. And that is like a powerful name.
Yeah.
Because it indicates that she's her own thing. And it's not like tied into the fates of whoever she happened to be married to at the time.
Yeah. And I mean, she really was very much like, this is my home. This is my country. This is my focus. And yeah, cool. You're the King of France or you're the King of England, but I've got my power here. We're good.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to see that as the story goes on, that she very much felt that way.
Yes, 100%.
How did you first encounter her story?
There are a series of books by an author called Sharon K. Penman, and they start talking about whales, and then she kind of goes back later.
The country, not the animal.
No, sorry. Yes, the country, not the animal.
This is going to be kind of a weird circuitous route, but we're researching orcas, and it turns out.
Yes, country, not the animal. And then she goes back and picks up with the story of Stephen and Maud, who Maud was Henry II's mother. And when her father died, he was like, yep, you should all go respect her. She's going to be queen after me. And pretty much all the men in England were like, no, thank you. And so they fought this massive 20-year war. It was brutal. People starved. And eventually Maud was like, okay, I'm not fighting for me. I'm fighting for my son. He's going to be a great king. And a bunch of stuff happened. And eventually, of course, he was crowned as king. Sharon K. Penman starts the story there, and then she follows through Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine and how they meet and their story, and of course how it all ends, going straight into Richard the Lionheart, who of course is Henry's son and Eleanor's son.
Yeah, and so this book series, it's nonfiction?
It's fiction.
Oh, interesting.
She does a great job, I think, with really blending a lot of historical fact with also making it really interesting and character driven.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing that I'm fascinated by is people who write historical fiction, and you're doing it too, where I always have such a hard time because people say, oh, you do all the history stuff, you should write historical fiction, but it's always tricky because I don't write dialogue. I quote people, but I don't write any dialogue. So it's a totally different animal to work on that sort of thing.
Oh, definitely. And, I have it easier because my characters are made up. Hers are all real. And I'm always amazed by her books. I love reading them.
And for Eleanor, it would be even trickier because there's not like a ton that has been written. We don't have a ton of her writing.
No.
We have some of it, but not a lot. And so you don't have this huge sample set to go off, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was no descriptions of what she looked like. Everyone said, oh, she's so beautiful. She's so gorgeous. We're not actually going to tell you what color her hair was or her eyes were, but really stunning. And you're like, thanks. That's super helpful.
That's perfect, right? It's the Lovecraft thing where it's just like, imagine the most his thing was imagine the most terrifying thing you can think of. It's that. Yeah. And like, okay, it's a spider for one person and it's a snake for somebody else and it's, a tentacle monster for somebody else. But like, now you can do that. They do it with Helen when they talk about Helen also, Helen of Troy.
Absolutely, yeah.
But for Eleanor, it's just like, yeah, she's just imagine like a very beautiful queen.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like, that's what she looked like.
She was gorgeous. You would have wanted to sleep with her. Okay, great.
Yes, everybody did. Okay, so I guess let's take a quick break right here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Eleanor of Aquitaine. So let's start the story. Eleanor is born in 1122. We don't know the exact date of her birth. We're pretty sure about the year. But she's the daughter of William, who is the Duke of Aquitaine.
Yes.
Now, we should set up what Aquitaine is and where it is. Because it doesn't exist. I mean, it exists now, but it's a state and it's not a country.
Yeah. I mean, technically, it was, I guess, part of France. They owed fealty to France, but it was the size of 1/4 of what we think of France today. It was massive. And, back then, dukes were considered as powerful as kings, or at least they considered themselves as powerful as kings. And certainly William, Eleanor's father, thought of himself as being equal.
He had more land than the king.
Absolutely.
So Aquitaine is in like the southwest corner of France. It borders, the ocean and the Pyrenees Mountains. So basically like Spain now. Yeah. And yeah, the Duke is the highest level of nobility, and he was rich and he had a lot of land, and he was in a lot of ways even more powerful probably than the King of France. He just occasionally had to be like, no, you're the king. I'm just the Duke. But don't mess with me though.
Yeah, it was definitely like, I'm going to come and say, thank you for letting me have these lands. But if you were to try and take them away, I would definitely kill you.
Yes. And I could. Just don't forget that. And so William that's the character of William. He's traveling on pilgrimage in 1137 and he dies while he's on pilgrimage. And in his will, he does something that's pretty interesting for the time. And he leaves everything to his 15-year-old daughter, Eleanor.
Yes.
So she suddenly becomes extremely wealthy and powerful. She was already, but now she's more so.
Yeah.
And he also writes a letter as he's like dying, I think on his deathbed. He writes a letter to King Louis VI of France and says basically like, take care of her and take care of my lands and, make sure everything goes smoothly. And so King Louis does this by getting her engaged to his own son so that he can inherit her lands and her money and all that stuff.
I know.
I think immediately dies.
Yeah. For him, it was like this moment of like, jackpot. This is amazing.
I'll definitely take good care. Yeah, I'll take care of all your lands. I got an idea.
I have a great plan. Yeah.
My kid's awesome. My son's great. You'll love him. Don't worry. And then I love that he just like immediately dies. They get married, and then within a month, Louis VI dies.
Yeah. I don't think Eleanor ever met her father-in-law. I think it was like, we're still in pilgrimage. We're still having a great time in Aquitaine. Yay! And then, oops. Yeah.
Bad news. Dad's dead. Worse news. You're now engaged to a guy you've never met before. Oh, and worse news. Your father-in-law's dead now too.
Yeah, so congratulations. You're the Queen of France. Go you. Yeah.
You're gonna meet your new husband at his father's funeral.
Yes. Yeah. I do want to point out, though, Eleanor did something really, really interesting in her marriage contract. Because usually for women at that time, it's like, you get married, you no longer own anything.
Yes, you are no longer a person.
You no longer have stuff. But what Eleanor did is, rather than letting that be her marriage contract, she basically said, okay, cool. I'm Duchess of Aquitaine. I'm going to keep being Duchess of Aquitaine until we have a son who reaches majority, and then he's going to be Duke. So she never actually gave up that power until she had Richard, which I think becomes very, very important later on. Yes.
And like a lot of forethought of what you said, like they weren't just going to steal her lands by marrying her off to the son, right?
Yeah.
And she had the foresight to do that, and she had the power. Like, it wasn't like she was the first person to think about doing that, but she had the power and the army and the money to make that happen. Like, I will do this under these terms and conditions. And at this time period, you had to be able to back that up with something, right?
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, her people and her barons were like, we're not so sure about this King of France. So let's just hold a beat on that.
I'm happy where I'm at now, and we'll just keep doing that. And so this all kind of speaks to the character of Eleanor. You've mentioned her beauty, and that's something that comes up a lot. But one of the best quotes I read on her was by the when she dies, the nuns of this convent write a epitaph for her, an obituary for her, and they say she is beautiful and just, imposing and modest, humble and elegant. And so, her character, she seems like she would have been a really interesting person. She might be on like the short list of people you'd invite to like the historical dinner party.
1,000%.
Who would you invite to?
Yeah.
She is she's a patron of the arts. She likes nice things. She likes fancy things.
Yep.
She likes art and music. But also she'll kick your ass.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because when you look at her and Louis's marriage, it was she came from a place where you have these bawdy poems and you have music everywhere. And then she goes up to Paris and it's dark and it's dank and they're humorless. And she's kind of like, what? Like I think it's definitely an adjustment for her.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? To think that like Aquitaine had roving bands of troubadours playing music and everything. And then you get to Paris and it's weird to think that at this time In 1147, like Paris is depressing, and cold and dark,
and crowded, as opposed to these wide open fields and the sunshine of the South, and miserable and cold. And and from what I understand, the palace that Louis lived in was not especially well kept up, so there weren't as many tapestries on the wall, which are both beautiful and keep it warm.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that. But yeah, like, and I mean, this isn't Versailles. Versailles is not built yet.
No.
This is not what we think about when we think about French royalty. This is, the 12th century. This is stone walls and like Viking influence involved here. And there's all kinds of like, it's a little grim, especially, and it's not as fancy as the place she came from because she was
not at all.
Richer. And okay, but so she spends a lot of time. She stays in Aquitaine. She spends a lot of time there. She's spent some time in France or in Paris. And there is, she is this strong personality, and she does have a pretty strong influence over King Louis VII.
Yes.
And there's some speculation, like, as we said, we don't know what they talked about when the doors were closed. But there is some speculation that when France joins the Second Crusade in 1147, she kind of helped influence that decision. I
mean, when you look at Louis, he was never supposed to be king. He was always determined to go into the church, and then his older brother died. And so you have this boy who was raised as a monk or going to be a monk, and he hears over and over again that like women are evil, sex is evil, this is horrible. And then you marry him to Eleanor, who was raised with the idea that like sex is amazing, you should do it all the time. Of course, like he is terrified of her and doesn't really want to share her bed. And, of course, she's supposed to be having kids left and right. And she can't get her husband to sleep with him. And, one of her most famous quotes from that marriage was, she said, "I thought I married a king, but instead I married a monk." And
Burn.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a pretty brutal thing for your husband to say, or for your wife to say. But
now they can combine those things. He can be a king and a monk because he's a crusader now. They're going to go off to the crusade.
Yeah, and I don't think Paris was a happy place for her. She didn't get along with her mother-in-law. She didn't get along with a lot of the counts. There were two clerics who hated her. And so I'm sure the Crusades came along. She's like, wait a minute, I get to go on an adventure and I get to bring my soldiers who I like and all the people I like, and I get to spend time with them, and I can bring my sister. Absolutely. Let's go do this.
Yeah. And so they leave for the Second Crusade, and she goes with them. There's, you see some things from the time period where she's wearing armor and she's riding with other women in armor, wearing symbolism that would evoke images of the Amazons. And so they head out on this Second Crusade. They go through Germany, they go through Eastern Europe and the Balkans. They stay in Constantinople for a while. And they eventually end up in Antioch, which is part of what's known as the Kingdom of Jerusalem at the time. The First Crusade was able to take several cities from the Arabs, but now there is these kingdoms are being threatened because it's really hard to supply a bunch of castles halfway across the world.
Yes. Well, and I mean, just getting there was disastrous. I mean, Louis lost half his army. He just messed everything up, like horrible with logistics. And when they arrive in Antioch, the person running Antioch is Eleanor's uncle.
Yes, Raymond of Poitiers.
Yes.
He's her uncle.
Yeah. And, I think he's only 8 years older than her. And she grew up with him and she adores him and she hasn't seen him in forever. She's like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. And Louis is kind of like, wait a minute, who's this guy?
Yeah, what's happening here?
Yeah.
I feel like you like this guy more than me.
Yeah, I think by that point she definitely liked Raymond more than her husband.
Yes.
But yeah, Louis was insanely jealous, and everybody's whispering in his ears like, oh, she's having an affair with her uncle. I don't personally think that was true, but it was a really good way to disparage women at the time.
Yes, she seems happy. Something's wrong. You're doing something wrong. Your wife's not supposed to be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Middle Ages. You're supposed to be depressed. Everybody's depressed.
Yes.
So yes, and so she is happy there, and she likes it. And Raymond is he's a Crusader knight. He knows the situation. He's here. He lives here. This is his castle, and it's an important one. And it's being threatened now by the armies of the Turks and the Arabs and the Egyptians. And Raymond wants to attack. He thinks that what needs to happen here is they need to attack Aleppo. Aleppo is the base of a guy named Nur ad-Din, who is, we've talked about. I did an episode on Saladin. Yes. Nur ad-Din is kind of Saladin's mentor. Yeah. And Nur ad-Din is a powerful guy, and he's got an army based at Aleppo. And Raymond of Poitiers thinks we should go take this guy. But like you said, Louis, he's not a military guy. He's a monk.
No. Yeah.
And he doesn't want to, I'm not going to go to attack Syria, attack this guy in his castle. I'm a monk, and I need to go attack Jerusalem. I need to go get Jerusalem. Yeah. So that's where I'm headed.
Yeah. I mean, his whole thing was like, I got to go pay homage to, Christ in Jerusalem before I can do anything else. That's my number one priority.
Right. I got to go there. Got to see this. We were doing that first. I'm so close to the Holy Land. I got to get there. And there ends up being this argument between these two guys. And Eleanor, very aggressively takes Raymond's side. Yes. Not just because she likes him, but also because this seems like the correct, military. That's what we came here to do, is fight a war, not, go on a pilgrimage. Last guy I knew that went on a pilgrimage didn't come back.
Yeah. So. And I mean, I think Eleanor was also a brilliant tactician. And so she could kind of read the room. She knew who to trust. She was a great judge of character. And by this point, she was like, Louis is an idiot. He has no idea what he's doing. But my uncle does. Let's go listen to him. Yeah.
Exactly. And so she is good at this, and we'll see it as the stories continue on too, that she can read the room's a great way of putting it, that she understands the politics here very well. Yeah. She chooses the court at Antioch, and at some point it must have gotten pretty heated because Louis basically puts her under house arrest.
Yep. And he kidnaps her.
Yes, he kidnaps her and he locks her up.
Yeah. And he kind of drags her to Jerusalem, is like, you are coming with me. No more hanging out with your uncle. We're done with that nonsense. And and as you can imagine, she was very, very happy about that.
Yeah. That's really great for your marriage.
Yeah. That's when you know your marriage is going well.
Just kidnap her. Yeah. Drag her to Jerusalem. We're going to go look at this church. Yes. So that's what they do. Nur ad-Din consolidates his forces and will eventually capture Jerusalem for the Arabs, and will hold it, who will then hold it for the next couple hundred years. Yes. So maybe they should have attacked him. Maybe that was the correct maneuver. Maybe not. We don't know. Yeah. We can't look back on time. But what Louis didn't work, and the Second Crusade was a failure. It was a huge victory.
It was an absolute failure. And I think also Raymond died in this whole thing. And I don't think Eleanor ever forgave Louis for that. Their marriage was on the rocks anyways. And I think, by the end of this particular crusade, she was like, no, I want out of this. And Louis was like, but I love you, and you have Aquitaine, and that's a lot of land. I don't want to let you go. And they had only had one child in 12 years of marriage. And it was a girl. He had no heir.
Yeah, he hadn't fulfilled his part of the contract. Yeah. To get Aquitaine. Exactly. And so they come back, they get back to France in 1149, and the marriage is not going well. On the way back to France, they stopped in Rome, and they're like, hey, you're the Pope. Can you just say that we are too related and that it's God's curse? That's why we haven't had a son. And the Pope is like, actually, I'm going to lock you two in a room, and you need to reconsummate your marriage and give that a try. And so on the way back to France, Eleanor realizes that she is pregnant. And I don't think it's this joyous moment. I think she's kind of like, oh, if I give him a son, I am never getting out of this marriage. Yeah. And, even just the idea that she could get out of the marriage is pretty significant for 1152
Yeah.
in human history. Because what happens is she is able to get the marriage annulled in 1152, which must have been a battle. It must have been some story.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there were a lot of people who didn't want Louis to let her go, and more specifically, didn't want to let Aquitaine go. And, she's playing on what she knows about him. Like, he is a monk. He is incredibly religious. And yes, they got dispensations left, right, and center saying it was okay for them to get married. But she's looking at him and saying, actually, this is God's curse. God is not happy with our marriage. That's why we do not have a son. You will never have a son with me. So what you going to do? And finally,
that pregnancy comes to term, and it's a girl.
And it's a girl.
And what a great way to play the guy, though, right?
Yeah.
No, it's God's. God doesn't like it.
God doesn't like it. You should let me go. And eventually he does, but you can't get remarried unless I say it's okay. And she's kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever. That's fine. Let me go back to my lands.
Mm-hmm. Which she does. And now she is no longer married. Mm-hmm. There's some crazy story that some guy tried to kidnap her and make...
Two guys, one of whom was Henry II's brother, Geoffrey.
Geoffrey of Anjou, yeah.
Yeah.
He was going to kidnap her and force her to marry him, and that was just okay, and that would just make all of her lands his.
Yeah, it was a thing. Like, you could kidnap a woman and find a priest to be like, oh, she was totally happy about it, and then rape her, and then guess what? She's your wife.
And you get all of her lands.
And
that's messed up. That is extremely messed up. There's a lot of messed up stuff in history, but that's really messed up.
So messed up. And by this point, too, I mean, she's already had that conversation with Henry being like, you're about to be King of England, and you have a whole bunch of land up north, and I have all this land south, and you're pretty good looking guys, so let's figure this out.
Let's figure it out, which they do.
Yes.
So in 1152, not long after getting the annulment, she escapes 2 kidnappings and then sends a letter to Henry demanding marriage with him, which he agrees to. And so he will become Henry II, King of England. And he at the time was the Duke of Normandy, which is in the northern part of France.
Yes.
So he has French holdings, he has English holdings. She's 32 at this time, and he's 21.
Yes.
He's 11 years younger than her.
Yeah.
And they get married, and God must have shined on their relationship because they have a lot of boys. So they have a lot of kids, and many of them are boys.
She gives birth to 4 live sons, and one of which dies in infancy. But 3 of her sons grow to adulthood, and she also gives him, I think, 4 daughters as well, 8 kids.
Most of whom end up marrying various kings and crown princes across Europe, Germany, Sicily, Castile.
Yes.
So they call her the grandmother of Europe because she had so many kids that got married into so many positions of power.
Yes.
That at some point, when the joke that all the royalty in Europe is related, and she's contributing factor to that.
Yeah, and ironically, a lot of her son married one of Louis's daughters, obviously not by her, but through his second marriage. And so, despite the fact that they are divorced, Louis was okay enough to be like, oh, wait, my daughter might be Queen of England? Yeah, okay, I'm okay with this.
That sounds good, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do that. So that is, so this marriage ends up being pretty powerful.
Yes.
And she continues doing what she was doing with Louis, where she's working in politics and administration, which is a thing that she's very adept at, as we've seen. And she turns the court into this kind of cultural hub for music and the arts, romantic songs, plays about courtly love. She's kind of attracting musicians and artists. And whereas we were saying that Paris was kind of gray, her court becomes one of kind of happiness and music and singing and plays and
absolutely
tournaments and things.
Yeah, and I think also Henry really trusted her. So he was off fighting one battle or another, and he would just be like, okay, I'm going to go put down rebels in Normandy. So you just take care of England while I'm gone, or I'm going to go do this. You take care of that part while I'm gone. And, Henry was raised with a really, really strong mother. So I think the idea of marrying another strong woman and trusting her ability to govern was part of his DNA. He just grew up that way. So it wasn't as strange as it might have been to somebody else.
Right. You'd mentioned Maud earlier, and she was also a powerful woman. And
yes.
We see that again with Eleanor. And it's a thing that we don't see that often when we're looking at this time period of human history. But she is so unique among the leadership of Europe at the time, which is just a testament to her own personal fortitude and her ability to knock down doors and just get what she wants done through whatever means are available to her. That ends up going pretty well for a while.
Yes.
Until at some point, her son or her sons decide to rebel. Like, we had the rebels in Normandy, and now we have rebels in your own court. Her sons rebel against her husband in 1173.
And I think that a lot of this was Henry's own fault. Henry II had to fight for his kingship. So he really wanted his succession to be assured. So his eldest son, Hal, he had him crowned in his lifetime. He gave his third son, Geoffrey, all of Normandy and Anjou, and Eleanor had given her second son, Richard the Lionheart, all of Aquitaine. And especially with Richard, she'd really loved, she had raised him to love Aquitaine as much as she did. But the problem is, here you have Henry, and he is not willing to give up any little teeny tiny bit of power. So you have these boys who've been named, Duke of Aquitaine, Duke of Normandy, King of England, and yet they have no real power. They have no money. And that is incredibly frustrating for them. So, yeah. And I think Eleanor, she was really great at what I think of as soft power. Aquitaine was always in rebellion one way or another. They had troublesome barons. And Henry would come in and just put everybody down with force. He'd be like, no, you're not doing this. I'm going to raise your castle. Eleanor would come in and be like, okay, these are the things I can accept. These are the things I cannot. Let's figure out where we meet in the middle. And I'm only going to raise your castle if I absolutely have to. And so she was able to handle Aquitaine in a way that Henry never could. And she raised her son, Richard, to also be that. He was more of a, I'm going to burn down your castle regardless, but
we've talked about Richard too. When we did the Saladin episode, Richard the Lionheart is portrayed promently, but generally as I'm gonna smash your face.
Yeah, I'm gonna smash your face. I'm gonna burn down your castle. But I do like to believe he at least followed his mother's lead a little bit and was like, I'm gonna talk to you and then I'm gonna burn down your castle.
We can do this two ways.
Exactly. You have a choice right now. I have a giant army. But I think that, for his sons, it was really about them feeling powerless, them feeling like they were never going to have the ability to rule the lands that they felt were theirs.
And as with the Second Crusade, there is some suspicion that perhaps Eleanor might have had some influence over her sons making this decision.
Yes.
We don't know for sure. There's no letters or anything, but there is some suggestion that maybe she was, coordinating or helping advocate, or at least agreed in principle to what the boys were doing.
Yeah, I think by that point, her marriage was not as wonderful as it had been in the beginning. Henry was openly flaunting his mistress, Rosamund Clifford, at court, which I think was probably an ego bruise to Eleanor. And, she was kind of off in Aquitaine doing her thing, and her boys were living with her and they were kvetching about their father. And yeah, I think there was definitely an element of Eleanor being like, well, if you talk to this guy and you talk to that guy and you talk to this other guy, then maybe you guys can kind of form a coalition.
We could smash his face. Hear me out.
Yes. there are options. Yes.
Could burn out his castle and smash his face.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they try, and what you said is great about Aquitaine, because Aquitaine is loyal to her more than anything else, to her, and then to Richard, who, like you said, was being groomed to take over Aquitaine.
Absolutely.
And the kings or the barons and the nobility of Aquitaine, the soldiers, the people, they stay loyal to her.
Yeah. Over
the kings, because they were French and now they're British or they're English. Yeah. And like it doesn't matter. They are loyal to her and whatever she wants to do. And so they join on her side. King Henry wins the war. And,
yes.
And
her sons
Eleanor,
are able.
like you said, yeah, and she runs for it, and they lose, and she makes a break for it because she doesn't want to get captured. She goes for the court of Louis VII, her ex-husband, but she's captured along the way. And she's arrested. And she's brought back to England. Yeah.
And part of that scandal was that she was arrested wearing men's clothes and riding astride. And
my God.
All of the historians of the time are like, oh, that's shocking. Yeah.
Women aren't supposed to put their other leg over the saddle. What are you doing?
What is this? This is not okay.
Somebody call the Pope.
Yes, definitely not the feminine ideal in that moment. Yeah.
So she's captured and she's put under house arrest or not house arrest. It's like kind of soft arrest. Yeah. Kind of minimum security prison for the next 15 years in England.
Yes.
Where, it's not so bad, but it's not what it's definitely a downgrade over what she had before.
Yeah, I think that, in her early captivity, it's definitely like, okay, you have nice rooms. You're not in the dungeon, but you're also not going to go for a long horseback ride in the country. And you're not really going to talk to anyone. And I think that as the years went by, because she was held captive for 16 years, it got a little bit looser and a little bit easier. And of course, she had all of her kids petitioning on her behalf.
And she has that strong personality where at some point she's able to kind of convince the people in charge of her captivity to give her a little bit more freedom.
Yes.
And by the end of it, it's a little better. But I can't imagine it's fun to be imprisoned in the 12th century for 15 years.
No.
So.
And I think she did keep her spy network, so she knew what was happening. But she didn't do anything.
Had no power. She used to have so much power to influence decisions in politics.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about some of the bigger things where there's been wars that she's been involved in, helping, plan. But she was also very prominent in just kind of day-to-day administration stuff, as you said, when Henry was out fighting or when, when Louis wasn't that interested in it. She was doing a lot of the traditionally kingly administrative duties of just running a kingdom, a very powerful kingdom with a lot of people in it.
Absolutely. I mean, at one
point
point in England, she basically redid their mony. And she was like, right. you have this currency. Cool. We're going to redo it and make it easier for everyone else.
Right. And so that's just the power that she had. She's the queen. What are you going to do? Right. And she had this power and she was exercising it regularly. And generally what we have seen is that she did a very good job of it. Right.
Yes.
The kingdoms that she's administrating are becoming more prosperous, more profitable, and bigger. And so it must have been pretty difficult to be reading the news when you used to be able to influence it and now you can't.
Yeah.
And
I think, honestly, she disagreed with a lot of what was happening. I mean, she obviously disagreed with the way that Henry was treating their sons, but, Henry was also very, very big on taxation. And Eleanor was a little bit more understanding of, hey, if you want people to be loyal to you, you have to let them keep some of their money.
You can't take all of their money and then use that to hire soldiers to burn their houses down.
Exactly. That's not ideal. Yeah.
Medieval economics 101. But if I tax you more, I can burn your village down more efficiently.
Exactly. It's fine, right? Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to jump into Eleanor's time with Richard the Lionheart on the throne. In 1189, Henry finally dies. He's 11 years younger than Eleanor, but she outlives him, and Richard the Lionheart becomes King of England, and he has her released.
Yes.
So that she's at the coronation.
Yeah. I do think it's important to note that during those 16 years she was imprisoned, her eldest son died after looting a church. And then Geoffrey, her third son...
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. Not saying it's God's punishment, but maybe it's God's punishment. Yeah. And then Geoffrey, her third son, was killed in a jousting tournament. So the only person left is Richard, who she loved, and John, who she did not care for.
Who's King John, who we know as the villain of all the Robin Hood movies.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, wow, jousting accident and died looting a church. This is the very, very 12th century ways for her sons to go out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the Black Death hasn't come around yet. That's the only other thing that you would think. we're a little early for that.
Yeah.
So Richard the Lionheart becomes King of England. Richard the First. We've talked about him on our Saladin episode.
Yes.
And he runs the realm, and she kind of goes back to what she was doing before. Only now, instead of being the queen, she's the queen mother, I guess is the correct term.
I guess. Yeah, but he gave her a lot of leeway. I mean, when he became king, like when Henry died, he was over in Aquitaine or Normandy or France doing his thing, and she was already in England. And she took the 6 weeks between when he found out he was king and when she found out he was king until the time he actually arrived in England, going around and, making people love him. Going around and giving alms and setting prisoners free and having everybody be like, every time she did something nice, she was like, this is from your King Richard. Isn't he great? Isn't it awesome that he's now your king? And so by the time he arrived, all of England was like, oh, yay, you're here.
And it's great because, yeah, she is on the campaign trail for Richard, but Richard the Lionheart at this point had never been to England.
Yeah.
Never set foot in England. He didn't speak English.
Exactly.
He was French.
Yeah.
And we always think of him being played by Patrick Stewart or somebody, but
I think Sean Connery, but yes.
Yes, Sean Connery, Patrick Stewart, one of those, right?
Yeah.
But he was French, and he was Richard Coeur de Lion.
Yeah.
He did not he'd never been there, and so they were like, there was some sentiment of, oh, now we've got a French guy as our king.
Mm-hmm.
But they knew Eleanor, and Eleanor was able to kind of prime his arrival so that when he showed up, everybody's like, oh, the Lionheart is here. Great.
Yes, exactly.
This is great. We're going to have peace now. And so Richard, things are going okay for Richard. Pretty early on in his kingship, he goes off on the Third Crusade.
Yes.
Which is, again, what we talked about in the Saladin episode. But while he's gone, Eleanor is still there. She stays in England.
Yes.
And she's kind of doing the thing that she does. She's running the show.
Absolutely. And, she's not only running the show, but she has her youngest son, John, being like, well, your king is gone, so I'm here. Don't forget about me. He's very open about his ambition.
And Prince John is also becoming buddies with King Philip II of France.
Yes.
Be like, well, maybe we could work something out here.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's going okay. So Eleanor is kind of running things and also trying to fend off this sedition, which we have seen 3, 4, 5 times in this story now that we've just been telling. We've been talking for 40 minutes here, and we've seen 3 or 4 rebellions of like brothers or sons trying to attack their family members to become the king. That's the story of medieval Europe, and she's trying to hold off another full-scale civil war in England and France.
Yeah.
So things get a little more complicated for her when Richard is returning from the Third Crusade and he gets captured by in Germany, and
Yes.
the Germans hold him for ransom.
Yes, and for so much ransom, like just
so much ransom.
so much money. Yeah.
And this is the time period we usually see in the Robin Hood movies where King John is trying to take over as the
Yes.
king. Weirdly, Eleanor doesn't play. I feel like she should play more of a role in these movies because that would be kind of a fun.
I mean, she's hugely instrumental. Like Richard, before he left on the Crusades, taxed the hell out of the people, so they didn't have a ton of money. And then he gets captured coming back, and Eleanor has to go around to people and be like, "Hey, I know we already took so much of your money. We're going to need more because we're going to need to give this nice German man so much money."
Yes,
and my favorite part, though, is like she finally gets it together. She arrives. She shows up. She's like, "I've got your money." And he goes, "There's a slight problem. The King of France and your son John have offered me just as much to keep him hostage."
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know this story. Because she goes there. She goes to Germany personally. And she's in like she's like in her 70s or something.
Yes. Yeah, and goes up, hears that, her youngest son has betrayed her favorite son. And I think she made more than a couple threats to the German ruler. And he was like, okay, fine. You can have him back.
Wow, I didn't know that story. So she negotiates it with the equal money offer on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. And she gets him free, and she personally escorts him back. She's part of the entourage that rides back to England with Richard.
Yeah.
And takes back over.
Yeah.
And so she also kind of coordinated the GoFundMe for let's get Richard out of jail so you don't have to sit around with King John.
Yeah. Yeah. And she also ran Richard's personal life. He was kind of like, "Hey, I'm doing battle. I'm doing all these other things. I'm cool with this." And she's like, "You need a son. You need an heir." So like she goes over and finds him a princess and then takes her to the Crusades, to Richard, and says, "This is your wife. Go make babies." And Richard's kind of like,
I did not know this story either. That's amazing.
Yeah. She actually because Richard had rescued his sister.
She finds him in the desert, in the Holy Land.
Literally in the Holy Land, like brings this.
Can you just picture
girl.
like just dragging this poor girl by her hand, being like, "Richard,
yeah,
Ricky,
exactly.
Ricky,
Come
over
back.
here,
Hey.
Mom, I'm fighting a crusade."
And she's like, "Young man, you have not finished your chores."
You've got to make a baby.
Yes.
Have you made that baby yet? Mom, I'm busy.
I'm busy. Mom, I'm with my friends. Leave me alone.
Don't embarrass me in front of the Moors. Saladin's gonna laugh at me.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh my God, that's amazing. I had not heard that story. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I feel like that didn't work out or maybe God hated them or something, because when Richard dies in 1199, there is no male heir.
They're very childless. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's almost 80 at this point. Eleanor, she outlived Richard. She's outlived 3 of her 4 sons now. And now she gets to see John become the king.
Yes.
And he does, as we will see, he does such a bad job of being king that he will be the only king in England's history named John. There is no John II because everybody hated this guy so much.
Well, I think also, you look at what Henry II built. Love him or hate him, he had Aquitaine. He had like most of France at one point. And within a year of Eleanor's death, John had basically been like, "I don't care." He lost it all. He lost all of it to Philip II. And John's like, "Yeah, no, I'm cool. I'm in England. We're good." And that was that. He just literally squandered an empire.
He's known as, I always loved the nicknames and the epithets. So John is known as, Richard's the Lionheart. Yeah. And John is either called Lackland. I've seen him called Soft Sword. It sounds like a dick joke. I don't know if it is.
I'm willing to bet there were undertones there. Yeah.
But Eleanor in her late 70s, in 99, which is not a time period in history where humans lived to be in their 70s very regularly. We've seen many kings die in their 20s, 30s, and 40s in this story, and they presumably have access to the best doctors and medicine in the world, and they're still dropping dead before they're 50. So she's in her late 70s, having traveled to 2 crusades and traveled to Germany and traveled across like all of England and France and Constantinople and, you know, seen the world. She's going to take one more trip.
Yes.
So she crosses the Pyrenees Mountains in 1199.
In the middle of winter.
Oh, in the middle of winter. That's
she
right.
She did it. Yeah. She arrived in Spain in like January.
Dang.
Yeah.
So Virginia Hall vibes, crossing the Pyrenees in the winter.
Exactly.
And so she gets to Castile and finds her granddaughter Blanche, because she's worried about her line ending, because John doesn't have any sons and Richard doesn't have any sons, and now everybody's, you know, her daughters have had children in Europe, but her sons have not, and so or have not had male heirs at least, and so she goes and gets her granddaughter, who was the princess in Castile, and marries her to the French king's son as a way of kind of unifying the Plantagenets and the Capetians, the English crown and the French crown.
Yes.
And so that ends up continuing the line.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
It is, yeah.
She really went to the extra mile to... literally the extra hundreds of miles through the mountains.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting, though, on that trip, she went to see her daughter, her namesake, Eleanor. It was the first time she'd seen her in 30 years. And so there was kind of that like moment of, oh, hey, daughter, look who you become.
Have you been?
Yeah.
What have you been up to the last 30 years?
Yeah.
Wow. And so that marriage is there's one other story about her, like later on in life, in the early 1200s. There's a rebellion against John, and she finds herself she finds herself in a fortress called Mirabeau, and this guy Arthur of Brittany is going to lay siege to it.
Yes, who was her grandson?
Oh, he was.
Yes, he was Geoffrey's son.
Oh, okay. And so he's trying to take over, but the order of succession in
it was very
European
confusing.
It's always super confusing. I never understand. People know it, like the people who know this stuff, they know it. You go on any Order of the British Empire Wikipedia page, and they'll be like, well, he is 37th in line to the throne.
Yeah, exactly.
They know it down to the thing, but for me, it's always confusing, and I feel like it changes depending on whether they like the guy or not.
Definitely, and I think age was definitely a factor. Like, you don't want a 2-year-old child, or in Arthur's case, like a 12-year-old child, versus John, who is a full-grown man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like the kingdoms, and different kingdoms have different rules. They change the rules if they feel like it.
Yes.
So anyway, Arthur of Brittany is not in line to be the king. John is, and Arthur of Brittany revolts against him. And at some point, he finds himself besieging Mirabeau, which is where Eleanor of Aquitaine is.
Yes.
And there's a story that she's able to kind of rally the people defending the fortress, and they are able to hold out long enough for the English army to show up and relieve the siege.
Yes.
And the thing I read on it said it was the only military victory King John ever had.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So either he was highly motivated to get his mom out of there so that he didn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm never going to hear the end of this if I don't rescue my mom from the siege.
Man. Yeah.
Or probably more likely she had something to do with it. Her influence, once again, steered the hand of her sons to victory.
Something tells me she was really good at motivating soldiers and just men in general.
Mm-hmm. And women, everybody,
and
right?
Women,
she was extremely influential to all the people that she met, and she always left people with a lasting impression.
Yes,
there was some story from the Second Crusade where she had a wagon cart, like a wagon train that was just full of like party stuff. Cause she was like, I'm going to party in the Middle East. I'm going to go, we're going to have an awesome time. It's going to be a party. And so she brought just like a couple wagons of party supplies.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's where I would have wanted to hang out if I was in that army.
Oh yeah. Well, I also
you guys can go assault Jerusalem. I'll hang out back here. I'll guard the wagon train.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, when she was hanging out in Aquitaine before she was first arrested, she not only had her sister there, she also had her daughters-in-law. She had some of her own children, like own girls. She also had the daughter she was forced to abandon when she left Louis. Like Louis kept control of the kids, and she kind of was like, well, that's the price of leaving. And years and years later, she reconnected with her daughter, and they became incredibly close.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, despite everything that I'm sure that girl heard about her mother growing up.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Wow. And so Eleanor, she makes it to her 80s.
Yes.
She dies in 1204 at a monastery in Anjou. And she's interestingly buried next to Henry II.
Yes.
Who she was married to and she had a bunch of kids with that she loved, most of whom she loved, except for John. But who also, she rebelled against him and he imprisoned her for 15 years. So it's an off again, on again relationship.
Marriage is complicated.
Yes, marriages work. You got to work at it.
Exactly. Yeah. I do think it's really interesting that you look at Henry and Eleanor, and he was gone. Like, he was gone off doing this thing or that thing or the next thing. But there was like a stretch of years that every time they saw each other, she got pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they had 8 kids, right? Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, so there must have been something there.
It's just one of those relationships, you know? We get into a fight and we make up. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like there's also kind of a sweet revenge for her being like, hey, you, Louis, all of France, all you people who said I was deficient and couldn't make sons, guess what?
Yeah, turns out I can.
I can. In abundance.
You just married me to a monk.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the story of Eleanor of Aquitaine. What's the, what's the lesson? What's the takeaway here?
I think, part of the basic takeaway is that if you want to be a powerful woman, it helps to have a lot of money.
Sure.
She had a lot of options that...
What's a more actionable item? What's a more actionable badass thing we can do? I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean,
the secret to happiness level is being extremely wealthy and powerful and having a huge army, but...
Yeah, and born lucky. She was born into a family where her dad's like, oh, you're gonna be ruler? Okay, cool. I'm going to teach you how to do this.
Yes. But I'll say that she was not the only woman, probably not the only woman in the world at this time who was rich and had a lot of land and access to a big army.
Yes.
There was something special about her that sets her apart from the other powerful queens of Europe who maybe don't get talked about quite as much anymore.
I think she had a really good understanding of people. I think that she had a special talent of being able to meet somebody, whether it was a baron or a king or a peasant, and understand what they wanted, and then be able to do her best to give it to them. And in doing that, get them to give her what she wanted. And
even for the lower people, organizing the troops in a siege or mobilizing the people of London to be excited for their new king.
Yeah, exactly. I think that she was very astute about reading people and about figuring out the things that matter to them.
I think she also had a quality that we generally use to define badass, which is that she didn't give up. Right. She was under house arrest twice. Yes. She was arrested by 2 different kings of Europe.
Yes.
And she's escaped kidnappings and arrests and all of this stuff. And it didn't change her personality. She wasn't cowed by being put under house arrest in Antioch, it didn't slow her down. She's like, oh, I'm just going to find a new husband who's not going to do that. And then she found another husband who did do that again, but then she got it out from under him.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think she was really good. People would be like, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. And she was kind of like, watch me. Yes, I can.
Yeah, I don't think you can stop me from doing the thing I want to do. So I'm just going to do it, and let's see.
let's see how all this works out for you.
And which are great things that we can do in our lives. We can,
absolutely.
Yeah. So okay, Shaina Steinberg, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed going through this with you because Eleanor is an awesome character, and I have been wanting to talk about her for a long time. So Thank you for coming on and sharing her story with us. So where can people find more of your stuff? Are you online at all?
I am online, ShainaSteinberg.com, Facebook and Instagram. And then you can buy my books anywhere you buy books.
The books are An Unquiet Peace and Under the Paper Moon. Which is the first one in the series?
Under the Paper Moon is the first one. Okay. Unquiet Peace just came out.
Okay. And so those are both available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. And you also mentioned that you had a script that was accepted, and we haven't talked about it yet.
Yes. Yeah, it was... It's called Bride Hard. It's starring Rebel Wilson, and the logline is basically Bridesmaids meets Die Hard. Awesome. A friend who of a CIA agent is getting married. Nobody knows she's a CIA agent, and when terrorists take over the wedding, she has to save everybody.
Excellent.
Yes.
Love it. When is that coming out? Is it already in production?
It's coming out June 20th.
Wow, so soon. Really soon.
Yes. You can even see the trailer online.
Oh my God, that's awesome. It's your first movie that you've written?
Yes. First movie that I've written, first movie that got made. I'm really, really excited.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, okay, well, we'll have to have you back to talk about badass CIA agents. We'll have to talk about a spy at some point. I feel like you've written books about the OSS and you've written a movie about the CIA. So I feel like we do at some point need to talk about something that happened after the invention of gunpowder.
I would love that.
Okay, great. All right, well, we'll make that happen. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
And thanks to all of you for listening. We hope you liked this episode. If you did, please do leave us a review and like and subscribe and do all that stuff that you're supposed to do. If you didn't like it, that's okay. We won't be mad. Just don't leave us a bad review because we don't want those. Just keep it to yourself. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next episode. Stay badass. Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are me, Ben Thompson, Dr. Patricia Larish, and Andrew Jacobs. Writing is by me and Pat. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Mixing and music and sound design by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeartRadio. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and tell your enemies. And please leave us a rating. We'll be back next week with another one.